I begin today's podcast by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we record today, the Dark and Young people. I pay my respects to elders, past, present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples listening today. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Hello and welcome to another episode of Your Parent Coach. I'm Mel, I'm a parent coach and a youth mentor. And today I'm really excited because I am joined by Monica Tanner, who is a mum of four, a relationship coach, and a podcast host of her own podcast, Secrets of Happily Ever After. She's also an author, and we'll talk about how we can get your book later on. But the book is called Bad Marriage Advice, which I love. And she helps couples improve communication, navigate conflict, and reconnect so that their relationships and families can actually thrive long term. So, welcome, Monica.
Thank you so much for the great introduction, Mel.
No, of course. I'm really excited to talk to you because I think that this particular topic is super important. I work with a lot of parents that will benefit from listening to today's episode. And so this is one that I would highly encourage if you are listening today as a parent, pop this on in the next car ride you have with your partner. Because it's going to be a good one. So let's dive in. The first question I ask all of my guests, and it's a really interesting one, what comes out. But you're a mum of four, so I'm really keen to see what comes out of this one. But what is something that a child or young person has taught you that you would never learn through training or education?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I think that I learned the hard way that you cannot control your children, no matter how hard you try, even if you're bigger than them and you have read all the parenting books. The reality is that each kid comes out differently. They come out with personalities and proclivities of their own. And so no matter how hard you try to, kind of guide them in the right path, they always have their agency. They're always going to execute their own choices. And for the most part, you get to witness, you get to love, you get to cherish, and just enjoy the journey. So my kids have all taught me very different things.
Mhm.
It's really interesting because the same principles that apply to marriage apply to parenting, and that is you can't actually control anyone besides yourself. And so your time and energy is best spent figuring out how you want to respond to your children and to the people around you versus how you can control them or guilt them or rule them into doing what you want them to do.
Yeah, that's an important one. I think really, really key. I love how you've tied that back because my next question is going to be, how did you get into this work? And, what made you realize, okay, this is the kind of work that I want to be doing?
Yeah. Well, originally, when I was a young child, I was like the biggest hopeless romantic. I grew up on Disney movies where, the princess falls in love with the prince and they kiss and then they live happily ever after. And when I was 12 years old, my parents, who are both therapists, decided that they were going to divorce. And I remember thinking, wait a second, this is not how this is supposed to go. And
Mhm.
so at a very young age, I used to just really study married couples. I was like, what makes them happy? What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? And I learned that most married couples, or at least in my purview, weren't really happy. And I was like, well, this is silly. Why do we want to get married and not be like insanely happy?
Mhm.
And so I studied it in college and then after college and then right after I graduated from college, I met my Prince Charming and I was like, this is who I want to build a life with, but I want to make sure that we're happy together. And so through a whole lot of trial and error, because marriage is hard for everyone, especially if you're doing it correctly, right?
Mhm.
Um, I learned a lot about myself, a lot about, relationships, a lot about communication. And eventually, I formally studied it after my youngest child went to kindergarten, and I had a lot more time on my hands, and I learned intentional relational skills. And so that's what I teach and what I love. And most of the principles that apply to marriage also apply to raising children. And
Mhm.
creating relationships in the workplace and how you communicate with your neighbors. Like relational skills are relational skills, and nobody is born with them, and it's not modeled very well. You have to be intentional about learning how to communicate with other people.
That's so interesting. And I completely agree. So I have been with my husband. We've been married for almost 6 years, but we've been together for 16. Um,
Wow.
so a long time. And people often ask me that question. They're like, how have you been together so long? And because we were so young when we got together, and they often ask those questions. And I do actually think that the answer is that intentional, intention behind everything. There's intention behind communication. There's intention behind, but also it helps that you're best friends first. I do think that helps. Um,
I always say the ultimate goal is an intimate friendship and a passionate partnership. And how do you intentionally create that?
yeah, 100%. And so, okay, leading me into my next question. Love this. Um, how does the health of, let's just bring this back to, parents. How does the health of a parent's relationship together show up in the way that teens behave or
Mm.
communicate or even with their friends, right? Even when parents think they're doing such a good job of hiding the bad stuff.
I love this question. And for me, it's literally everything
Mhm.
because as parents, we're going to make mistakes. You have young children, correct?
No, I don't.
Oh, no children.
No
Okay.
children.
Okay. Well, before you have children, you kind of think you know everything. At least I did, right? I was like, oh, I'm going to be the best parent. But you will screw up young children. You will screw up parenting teenagers, especially when you're parenting teenagers. You basically know nothing. You figure out, like, I literally know nothing, right? And so I believe that you will mess up parenting your children. That is the purpose. Like, literally, that's the whole, like, you are giving your kids the opportunity to heal all of the mistakes that you made. The absolute best thing you can do for your children is model for them healthy relationship skills between you and your partner. You're teaching them to prioritize that primary relationship because you will raise kids, they'll be in your home for about 18 years. And then if you do it right, like good parenting,
Mhm.
you're basically putting yourself out of a job. Not that you won't always be their parent, of course you will. And
Yeah.
parenting adult children, let me tell you, is very different than parenting small children, right? But if you parent correctly, you're basically putting yourself out of a job, but you and your spouse will always be together. And I feel so strongly that by showing your children how to prioritize that primary marriage relationship, you're giving them permission and a really good blueprint of how to create that relationship themselves, how to heal a lot of the mistakes that you make as a parent within that loving relationship. And you're going to teach them that it's okay to make mistakes because
Mhm.
they will. But if you always come back to prioritizing that primary marriage relationship, creating that friendship, that love, like all relationships, and this starts with early childhood education. It was Edtronic doing an experiment with infants,
Mm.
but all relationships go through an endless cycle of harmony, disharmony, and repair. And so you will never be in perfect harmony with anyone. All relationships have periods of harmony and then disharmony. There's going to be a disconnect. And how you repair that disconnect is how your children learn how to become resilient,
Mhm.
strong, capable individuals. But also, it's where the strength of the relationship is really created. It's how you repair after disharmony that is what makes the harmony stage so special. So I always say, like, one of the sayings that like gives me like makes me shudder is when people say, let's just agree to disagree. The
Ooh.
goal is not to agree. The
Yeah.
goal is to understand each other, to gain more respect for each other. You do that through, I notice your saying is curiosity, creativity, and action, right?
Hmm.
The way that you gain a better understanding and respect for another person is to show curiosity, is to be vulnerable, is to be willing to look at who they are and how they became who they are, and to strengthen that relationship through repair. So you're
Mm.
always going to make mistakes as a parent, but if you are intentional about keeping your relationship strong and repairing after disharmony,
Mhm.
you will be giving your children the best possible blueprint for success in life.
Yeah, it's a massive one for their growth, but
Mhm.
also for your growth as a person, as an
Yeah.
adult, as a parent, as whoever you are. um, it's so important to have that because a lot of, and then also you're contributing to potentially breaking cycles, generational cycles, where you haven't seen that because
Yes,
your parents have
absolutely.
hidden that behind the wall and,
Yes.
nothing's ever wrong. Or the opposite, where it's always the bad stuff and you never seeing the good stuff because that stuff's hidden, which happens a lot too. So
Yes.
it's that modeling that we talk about or mirroring what you want your kids to display, with the young people that I work with. And this is where, I learn so much from them is that they are, they come in, they're vulnerable, they communicate, they get curious, all of these things. And then we get creative. How can we problem solve? How can we do that? I think as adults, we often forget that part where we can actually figure things out. And like you said, it's that agree to disagree, and no one's really solving anything, or not even solving anything, but no one's really
A better understanding.
yeah, growing or repairing. So
Yeah. And if you can learn to repair with a partner, you can repair with your children. And that's key.
yes,
If you're
I always say repair over perfection because a lot of parents get caught up in, oh, like, I don't want to be the first one to say sorry because I wasn't in the wrong, right? And, or, if I then apologize or if I go into repair mode, then they're never going to learn. It's like actually they're learning by you doing. And that's exactly what you should, go and do that because they're going to see, oh, this is mom or dad or whoever is modeling that behavior of how we come back from something like this, whether it be an argument, maybe particularly teenagers, we know this, they say really nasty things. And I mean, we say nasty things, and how do we come back from that? And it's about acceptance and what did they actually mean by what they said, not what they said on the surface, and all of those things. So
And one of the most important principles of parenting or any relationship,
mm,
especially your primary romantic relationship, is who's right and who's wrong, who cares?
who cares? Yeah, I love that. I love that. If anybody is listening today and they, tune out a little bit, or you've got this on in the car, take that away. Right, wrong, who cares? I
Right.
think that's going to be the title of this episode.
Yes.
That's amazing. I love it. And you know what? It's a really great phrase, whatever, to pass on to your kids because they can use that in their primary relationships, which is with their friends. And for now, and then they'll start to get boyfriends and that kind of thing. So, um, my next question is about you talk about roommate syndrome, and I'm really interested in this because I think it's relatable, not just to married couples, but often a lot of parents speak to me and they're like, oh, my teenager just treats this house like, they're living rent free and they just do what they want and and there's just no respect for the home and all of these things. And we've all had nightmare roommates. I know I have, when you're younger. And so, yeah, what is this roommate syndrome and how can that dynamic impact the household?
Yeah, well, specifically when we're talking about couples, like the parents, Roommate syndrome happens when you are not intentional about creating and keeping that connection. So, to kind of generalize that in your home, you have to be intentional. And this is really important. So, what I would say, if anyone's going to take anything away from this episode, is you have to teach people how to treat you. It doesn't matter how long you've been together or how much they love you or how smart or intelligent they are. Nobody knows what your specific relational blueprint is. So I was recently spending some time with a family, and there's not a lot of rules in their household. And so like the kids kind of run the place a little bit, right? There's a lot of love, but not a ton of guidance. And so, what I would say for parents is your kids or your partner or your children are not going to just accidentally show you love and respect or do the right thing. You
Mm-hmm.
have to tell them what you expect or what you want or what you desire. And it's okay to have wants, needs, and desires.
Mm-hmm.
That's sometimes a huge myth. We're talking about myths, like bad marriage advice. A
Mm-hmm.
huge myth is that, like, if you're service oriented or if you're a good person, that you don't have needs or wants or desires, that you just just walk around needless and wantless. And a lot of us were kind of modeled that in our families
Mm-hmm.
growing up. Like, a good woman or a good mom doesn't have a lot of needs, they just serve everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's just not, first of all, it's not sustainable and it's not part of like modern marriage and family. So if you're going to teach your kids or your partner how to treat you, it means fighting for the things that are important to you. It means teaching them that, when the toilet paper runs out, you refill it and you do it this way. I prefer the toilet paper going over, right? No
100%.
one
I'm with you on that.
Okay, right, right. But like, nobody's just going to accidentally know that about me, that it's super important that I don't want to sit down to go to the restroom and not have toilet paper, right? Like, that's just a basic, but that's not everyone.
No.
That's me, right? And so I'm like, in my household, we learn that when somebody uses the last of the toilet paper, you replace it and you replace it with the roll going this way.
Yeah. But it's
Um,
like it's these little micro things throughout the
yeah,
day or throughout
yeah.
life that make
Yeah.
such a difference to how things work, run, all of
Yeah.
these things.
And for me, I am a huge words of affirmation girl, right? So if you want to show me love and appreciation and respect, I love little notes, right? But nobody's going to accidentally do that for me, right? So, number one, I do that for myself. Like, people laugh at me when I share this, but I spend a lot of time at home by myself, right? So nobody sees all of the loads of laundry that I do. Nobody sees like the meal prep that goes into like dinners. Nobody knows how many clients I saw in a day or how many podcast interviews I nailed, right? So at the end of every day, I like to give myself words of affirmation. I'm like, great job, Monica. You nailed that podcast interview. You
Mhm.
really helped that client understand something important. And you also did 3 loads of laundry, ran some errands, and made dinner. Good job.
Mhm.
Like, I'm so proud of you. Like, maybe you didn't handle that one situation the best, but you learned something and you're going to do it better next time. That's
Yeah.
how I talk to myself at night,
I
right?
love
But I
it.
have also taught my husband that I love little notes, right? And so sometimes this is not natural to him. Like, he doesn't think about, like, he's like, why do whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I love it when you leave a little note on my computer and say, I am so thankful for this and this and this,
Mhm.
right? And so it's not like it means less because I told him. Like,
Mm.
it means more because he doesn't think about it. And so I've asked, like, hey, I would love little texts during the day, little
Yeah.
notes to remind me that you're thinking about me. Like, he writes on my mirror when I'm out of town, right? He'll be like, best wife in the whole wide world or whatever, right? So, like, he does those things not because he thinks of them on his own, but because I've asked him, because that's how I feel the most loved, seen, and appreciated. My
Yeah.
kids will do the same thing, right? Like, well, we get in a fight or, like some interaction doesn't go super well. Like most of the time, I'll get a little note, right? My
Yeah.
kids are like, "Hey, mom, I really appreciate how you did this and this and this for me." Now, they don't think of that on their own. Sometimes my husband will be like, "Hey, you were really mean to your mom, and you better like
Yeah.
whatever, like clean that up, right?" And so
Yeah.
my kids will
Yeah.
be like, "Thanks for being the best mom in the whole wide world. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to
Yeah.
like blah blah blah. I appreciate this, this, and this," right? Not because they thought of it on their own, because I've asked for it, or my husband has like pointed out to them, like, "Hey, you were really snotty to your mom just now. Like, you better apologize."
Yeah.
So we teach people how to treat us. And so that's what I think is most important to remember is that nobody's just going to accidentally do the things that we want them to do. We have to ask for it. And it doesn't mean any less because we've asked for it.
That's really important. It doesn't mean any less because you've asked for it, because you've asked for it, right? And
Yeah.
you've shown them or told them or whatever it is explicitly with intention, but they've listened.
Exactly.
And
So
that's what makes it special.
yeah, it takes more effort and more energy to love somebody in a way that's not like native to you. Like my husband and I are not big gift givers, but I did learn that my oldest son, he really appreciates gifts. And so we have to like really think about like, oh, what kind of a gift can we give to him that shows that we love him? Like that's his own
Yeah.
template. Like that's how he feels the most loved. And so we have these running jokes that like he's like, remember that Christmas when you guys got me like bedding? And I'm like, yeah, it was a really practical gift, but to
Yeah.
him, on something like thoughtful. And so he
Yeah.
married a girl who's way more thoughtful than we are, and gifts are like a big deal to her. And so we've learned that like if we really want to show love to him, it's not going to be words of affirmation or acts of service that are my husband and I's love languages. It's in gifts. And so it means more when
Mm.
we like stop and really think about and are intentional about a gift for him because
Mm.
we would not think of that on our own.
Yeah, that's so interesting, isn't it? And but it's also something that he's communicated to you in various ways, and you know this about them. And it's funny because, like, for example, my sister, I think hers would probably be gift giving, maybe, because
Mhm.
but she's very creative, so she'll hand make everything. Like
Yes.
last Christmas, she hand embroidered tea towels for everyone with their names on it, and
That's
like
special.
made handmade, beautiful landscape crafted cards and stuff. And like that's how she will show that. And it's not necessarily about what we want, right? It's about how can she share that part of herself with us, and by us going, wow, that's amazing. Like you're so
You feel
creative.
loved
And
and appreciated. Yeah.
yeah, she's like, oh, like thank you. Like that's so, and also now we have something that she's made. So but yeah, it's just like it's picking up on those different things, listening to what people are saying. And I love that. Yeah, be intentional. Be intentional. Love it. So, when parents, because I'm saying when because it happens, when parents often disagree on how to
Mm.
handle or tackle maybe one of their teens' behavior, or, how they're acting, um, what is something that they can do in a relationship sense to make sure that they do end up being on the same page? Because that is the biggest cause of disconnect.
I absolutely love this question. In one of the chapters in my book, Bad
Mm,
Marriage Advice, is called uh, Stop Compromising. I hate the word compromise because what a lot of people will do when they disagree about something, which, if you're both really showing up in a marriage because you married somebody that was so different than you, almost always you're going to disagree. Like,
mm,
in fact, two people cannot, it's not possible for two people to see something from the very exact same perspective. So
Mhm.
even if you disagree, like even if you have the same values, you're probably going to disagree on the execution of it, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so what most people do is they compromise, which means I give 50%, you give 50%, we meet in the middle, and we come up with something that actually neither one of us really likes. But
Mm.
I gave up some stuff, you gave up some stuff, and then we quickly came up with something that neither of us can really truly stand behind, but we compromised. I
Yeah.
think that's the worst marriage advice ever. I
Mhm.
think if you really, really want to take the best of what you have to offer and your spouse has to offer, and you're going to be disagreeing, especially on like how to parent a teenager or something, you collaborate, which is using the words that you have on your
Mhm.
screen or like
Mhm.
um, I always say curiosity plus vulnerability equals creativity. So
Mhm.
if you can be curious about your partner's position, get curious about yourself first. Like, what is most important to me here? So let's say your you this is something that my husband and I disagree on all the time is how our kids are going to get to use technology in our household. Like at what age do they get to use social media? How do they use their phones? How much time do they get to play games or whatever on their phones, right? We fundamentally disagree about social media in our household, okay? But we collaborate and it's different with each kid and we learn all the time,
Mhm.
but our collaboration is what is most, I have had to get very curious. So you start getting curious about yourself. What's most important to me? Well, I don't want my kids to end up leaving my household without any type of supervised social media, right? So
Mhm.
like I think it's important that they get like kind of titrated access to different social media or video game platforms, depending on my girls really are into social media. My boys are really into uh, video games. But my husband's like, no, I don't want any social media usage before they leave the house. And I'm like, but listen, they're going to leave the house. They're going to be 18. They're going to have this untethered access to it. And they have no idea how it's going to affect them. So for me, I want to be able to supervise their social to see how it affects their mindset, to be able to talk through them, if there's a bully or how to be cautious or what to post or like how to post, all of those things. I want to supervise them, and so basically, because we fundamentally disagree, I get really curious what's important to me and what's important to my husband.
Mm.
Why do I feel so strongly about what I feel strongly about? And what does he feel so strongly about and why?
Yeah.
And then we put all of that data. What are my reservations about his position? My reservations, I just said, like, I don't want to like throw him out into the wild, wild west without,
Mhm.
any
Yeah.
exposure.
Yeah.
And his reservations for my position are that he doesn't want them to be dealing with things before their brain is ready to
Yeah.
deal with certain things, right? And
Mm.
so I am very knowledgeable about what's important to him. He's knowledgeable about what's important to me. I'm knowledgeable about his reservations about my position, and he's knowledgeable about my reservations at his position. So we get all of that on the table.
Mhm.
And then we take the very best of my ideas and the very best of his ideas, and we collaborate. We
Yes.
get curious and vulnerable, and we create a solution that feels right and
Mhm.
test it. So
Yeah.
here's the other thing that couples get wrong is like they think, okay, once we've made a decision, that's the
That's
decision.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
But what we came up with might work really good for one kid and
Mhm.
not for the next kid. So we have to go back to the drawing board. We have to use the data of what we learned doing it with the first kid to figure out a different solution for the second kid.
Mhm.
And that's how you collaborate. That's how you take the best
Mhm.
of both of our experiences, perspectives, opinions, ideas, and you create a solution and you try it. And we
Yeah.
don't have to be married to that solution. Like if
Yeah.
we go a couple of months and we realize this is actually not working, we
Mm.
try something different.
Yeah.
And that's how you collaborate. That's how you you get curious about each other's perspective. So I gain a lot of respect for my partner. Like I get where he's coming from. I understand why he feels so strongly about social media and what he's so nervous about.
Yeah.
He respects, and that's how you create friendship. That's how you create respect. That's how you create intimacy.
Yes. And also, your kids are simultaneously potentially seeing you both collaborate and seeing you both come to some kind of solution, you know, and then they are, experiencing said solution, whatever it might be. And that's going to be a lot better than them experiencing whatever you compromised on because it's not probably going to work for them anyway because they weren't considered as part of that.
And
Whereas,
sometimes when you're
yeah,
talking about responsible parenting, you can bring your children into the collaboration.
yes,
Like,
100%.
what do you want us to know
Especially
about?
with teenagers. They want to be
Absolutely.
brought into the fold, right? They want to feel like they have a voice and like they have a role and that they're important.
Want
And
to feel seen and heard. That
yeah,
doesn't mean that they get the final say, but it
no.
means that they get to be part of this collaboration, that they get to be considered in the things that are important to them as well.
Yeah, yeah, totally agreed. No, I love that. That's so important. I have one question. I wonder if it's in your book, Bad Marriage Advice, but the old adage of never go to sleep angry. Do
Yes.
you do you talk about this?
Absolutely. There's a whole
I
chapter.
would love to
That
hear your
was
thoughts.
probably the worst advice that was given to my husband and I. And I cannot tell you how much sleep I lost over this because it was, couples that had a lot more experience than I did. And so I was like, I am bound and determined to get this marriage thing right. And so
Hmm.
if they're telling me that it's really important to never go to bed angry, I was like, well, I am like dedicated to this idea. And
Hmm.
my husband wasn't so much. And so I remember so many nights we would get into these little disagreements, or we'd be picking at each other, or we'd just both be grumpy because it
Hmm.
was late at night and we were tired. And
Yeah.
so I would feel like we got to stay up until we figure this
Yeah.
out. And my husband was like, I gotta go to bed. And so
Yeah.
he would just roll over and start snoring. And I
Hmm.
felt so unloved, so uncared about, so unseen. And I'm like sitting there shaking and crying. And like, I'm like, like, please,
Hmm.
please talk to me. We got to figure this out. Like, it's so important. We're not supposed to go to bed angry. And my
Yeah.
husband was like, I wasn't angry until you woke me up.
Yeah.
Right. And
I
so,
was
like,
over it. Yeah.
exactly. So it was like just butting heads until one day I realized I got curious about myself, which is curiosity is such an important principle if you're going to make any relationship work. I got really curious. I'm like, why do you get so, Monica, why do you get so upset when
Mm.
your husband rolls over and goes to sleep? And I was like, oh, it's because I feel abandoned.
Yeah.
It feels like he doesn't care as much as I care. I feel unloved, unappreciated, unseen, abandoned.
Hmm.
And so one night when he was like starting to roll over, I could tell he was shutting down. I was like, hey, I need to share with you what happens inside of me when you roll over and go to sleep. And I said, I feel unloved. I feel abandoned. I feel like you're going to wake up in the morning and be like, this woman is nuts and I'm
Hmm.
going to get out of here.
Hmm. Yep.
Because
Yep.
that was part of my experience. That's what I saw. That was like kind of modeled for me. I was like, at some point, all the men in my family, like you talked about breaking generational
Mhm.
cycles, men in my family left crazy women. That's what I saw.
Yeah.
And so I was like, when you roll over and go to sleep, I feel crazy. I feel like you're going to wake up and be like, I'm out of here. And my
Hmm.
husband was like, that is not in my programming. I will never do that. I am
Yeah.
here for the long run. However, at some point, my brain shuts down and I have to regenerate, regroup. I need to sleep so that I can get a better perspective on whatever it was. And so I said, okay, listen, how about if you're feeling that way, you say, I love you. I'm
Hmm.
not going anywhere. but I
Yeah.
need to get some sleep and let's revisit this in the morning. Now, I like so appreciated that he was able to do that for me so many
Mhm.
times. And
Yeah.
now we both can roll over and go to sleep because there's so much trust there because
Yeah.
I know that in the morning he's going to roll over. He always wakes up before me. He's
Mhm.
going to roll over. He's going to wrap me in a really big hug and he's almost always going to apologize.
Mhm.
Not necessarily because he did something wrong, but he's going to say, "I'm sorry we fought last night.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about it," right? And sometimes I'll be like, I don't even remember what the problem was. Like,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
just wake up
Totally.
and have a good day. Or sometimes I would be like, you said a really mean thing and I didn't appreciate it. And we'll like talk about it, right? So,
Mm.
like, we've created so much trust over the years that I know that we can both go to sleep. We'll both wake up with a clearer, like, more like balanced perspective. And we can talk about whatever it is with like new eyes. Like we're not tired. So like I laugh so hard. I'm like, yeah, at 2 in the morning when neither of you is thinking
Yeah.
clearly, that's the best time to try to come up with a solution, right?
Yeah.
No,
It's
go
a
to sleep.
Yeah, go to sleep and know that it's going to be okay. I think, but it's so funny, isn't it, that that adage has lasted, even that was the advice that I was given. And I think it's so interesting because in every other context, we say sleep on it,
Yeah, right. If
don't
you have a
we?
big decision to make, sleep on it,
Sleep
right?
on it. We'll think about, like, see what comes up in the morning. But
You're
when it
gonna
comes
think
to this,
clearer.
we don't say that. And isn't that so funny? So yeah,
It-
I'm with you on that. I think it's a really good takeaway for parents, but also like in a couple, but also with your teenager. You don't have to solve everything right before bed. They've had a huge day, you've had a huge day. They're at capacity, you're at capacity. There's nothing left in the tank to give. Anything that they say, truly they cannot be held responsible for after a
I
certain time. And it's
I
not going
can
to go well.
guarantee you're gonna love your teenagers more in the morning than you will late at night. And
Agree.
sometimes I've had to go in and like watch them sleep and be like, oh my gosh, I love this kid more than freaking
Mhm.
life itself, right?
Mhm.
And then you're like, okay, let's go to sleep. And tomorrow it's going to make more sense. Whatever it is, it's going to make more sense in the morning light than it does in the dark.
100%. Love that. So, 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 so important. And so, I feel like I could talk to you for about 3 years, but we're going to have to wrap up. Is there anything that you want to share with my audience? Any last golden nuggets of wisdom or, yeah, just final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I love what you're doing. I think the most important thing to remember is you're going to get it wrong, probably more than you're going to get it right. The answer is always love and remembering that it's never too late. Apologies can never be overestimated. Like, just be intentional. And if you make mistakes, regroup, try again. Your kids are so resilient and they literally are going to love you through anything. So if you're trying every single day, they're going to appreciate the effort. And this is amazing. Grown kids, like, my adult children remember way more good than bad, right? Like especially with my oldest, I'm like, dude, I screwed everything up with you. I was so bad at parenting. Like now I'm way better because I've
Yeah,
learned so much.
yeah.
But my oldest son, he's like, you guys were great parents. Like I want to be a parent just like you guys. And I'm like, I'm glad that he thinks that. I'm glad that he like excused all of the mistakes that we made with him because we had no freaking clue what we were doing.
Yeah,
Kids
yeah.
are resilient. They
There
are
is,
going to love you, right? I mean, as long as you're trying, as long as you're loving, as long as you're praying, as long as you're working towards something better, like you're on the right track. Just keep going. When you know better, you do better, and just be loving to yourself in the process.
Yes, that's a massive one. I love that. And so, where can people find you? Obviously, you have your podcast. So, Secrets of Happily Ever After, I will put the link in the show notes. Same for your book, which is on Amazon, right? So, people should be able to get it worldwide.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yay.
And you can learn more about all of my free and paid resources or how to work with me at monicatanner.com. Just my name, monicatanner.com.
Amazing. I'll put that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for being here. This has been so insightful. I've learned a lot.
Good.
And even though I'm not a parent, I am going to be taking away all of these amazing things and, applying this to helping my clients as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. And for everybody else listening, make sure you like, subscribe, do all the things. Share this episode with a friend because that is how we build community. Parenting is not supposed to be done alone, okay? It's really, really not. Invite people in, create your own village. Not everybody has, their own village, and so let's create it together. And I will catch you all in the next episode. Bye.